On this episode, we are taking a step back from the world of film to embrace another kind of fandom that sometimes gets overlooked. This is a tutorial, a 101 to miniature painting. Everything that you guys need to know, have questions about, and even where to start. We're sitting down with three experts. I'm Captain Nostalgia, and this is the Victims and Villains podcast, a podcast extension of the nonprofit that educates and engages individuals on mental health awareness through pop culture. The show starts right now.
We have with us today three tutorial mini painters, YouTube personalities. Some people may have should be familiar with at this point. With everybody knows who they are. We have Scott Walter Miniac. We have Kenny-Boucher from Next Level Painting, and Brent-Amberger from goobertown-hobbies.
Hello.
Hello.
Yo, what up, guys?
So we, on this show, talk a lot about mental health. And one of the things we've been working with is trying to kind of expand, because we've done a lot of movies and tying the subject back and forth between movies. And one of the ideas came up from, I saw that Plastic and Painting documentary. They had somebody posted a link on YouTube about. And one of the things they were talking about was their miniature painting and how it helped them in various aspects of their life. So we called on you guys. I knew who y'all were. Joshua, the co-host, he has no clue. He's not a mini guy. So this is going to be fun for him. But what got y'all initially started into the hobby to begin with?
Am I the oldest one of us three?
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like I'm like basically. Sure. Yeah, sure. I'm a boomer. I'm a boomer at this point. Right? But I do believe everyone's story is pretty similar, right? You guys walk in a hobby shop one day and you saw some sick minis, and then you were like, "Yo, I need that in my life right now."
That sounds about right for me as well.
Yeah. So a lot of these games that have minis are sold in the same store that sells Magic cards or what have you. You know, your classic nerd shop with maybe there's comic books, definitely Magic cards. And then over on the side, they got Warhammer 40K. And from there, it goes on and on and on.
We congregate as nerds.
It's like an endless supply of models you could choose from at this point with the various game systems. So
I have a question for Scott. I'm just always curious about what was the model, right? Like, because I think it's because I oversimplified the whole, like, you walk in, you see the minis, and you got to play. You got to do something with them. But there's also usually a model. Like, there's something you saw that you walked by this, this section of the store many times, and it wasn't until you saw this thing that made you jump in. I've never heard your story on that model.
Yeah, it was the concept art for Tyrion on the cover of the High Elf starter army box that you could get. I don't know if you remember him, but he has this huge wings on his helmet and a giant sword trailing behind him. That model. So Tyrion.
That's a good one. That's one of the best ones I've heard.
So I know the audience for this podcast maybe is a little bit more general audience, but this can be a very niche hobby. We're all happy that it's becoming more and more popular, but this is just a whole realm of characters and intellectual property going along with all of these figurines that we love to paint.
Yeah, that's good to mention.
So call us back if we're ever going too far deep into Tyrion's winged helmet, from the cover art back in '98. Like, let us know.
Because you really can, in this hobby, go from historical army figures to the most far out sci-fi stuff you can imagine. So,
oh my God, yes. I mean, even in the same IP. I mean, like Warhammer 40K is one of the more popular IPs in the game, and you're talking about dudes with self-propelled uranium tip, like 75 caliber machine guns, opting out of using that gun to use a punching hand and a sword, while another guy might have a chainsaw sword and a laser pistol in the same far future, sci-fi IP. Like, so it gets pretty crazy.
What were some of the challenges you guys faced in kind of getting started with this hobby?
I think the beauty of that question is that there wasn't really any challenges. It was just fiscal challenges for me when I was young. I know people who get started when they're not children have like a lot of trouble with trying to maintain a standard that is set by maybe box arts or other very talented painters. But for me, as a 10-year-old, there was no standard to maintain. And so I was just like, I'm just going to paint this however I want. I just got to mow enough lawns to be able to support all the buying that I need to do. So that I was fortunate for that reason.
Yeah, that sounds right. You buy yourself a mini, a figurine, and then a few paints and a paintbrush, and you can get on after it. And after that, a lot of the challenges are just in your own head about whether you're happy with what you're doing and whether you're going to keep on doing it.
I feel like that. I mean, that's really the only challenge. I think both these guys hit it on the head. It really comes down to dollar bills, right? You know, like the younger you are when you're exposed to the hobby, the less dollar bills you have. So therefore, the more infuriating the hobby can be as you move forward. But I mean, as a hobby, right? Just to tie it back to your guys' normal content, I find that there's a lot of art, right? This is art, right? You see like what Maniac and Goobertown are doing on those YouTube channels, and I do see a theme endlessly, and it's the art, it's the beauty in it. But I don't think there's a hobby quite like it, because yeah, sure, I can paint some stuff, I can learn to paint some stuff, I can take a community class to paint some stuff, whatever. But there's no hobby that is like, let's build these ridiculous winged helm elves, right? Then let's also figure out how to paint them, right? To my heart's content. Let's figure out painting, right? Painting isn't, like drawing. Painting is like, you got to figure this whole new thing out, right? So there's like this endless discovery process there while also being, subjectively an artist. But you're also like reading these books. They're not comic books. You're like reading full-on books about these dudes with these wings helms getting ridiculously hyped on the narrative, the lore. I mean, unreal, almost like irrationally hyped, like inappropriately excited about how awesome this stuff is, while the whole time you're painting the model, right? So you're doing art, you're reading, you're getting hype on stories, you're doing craftsmanship, you're building stuff for the first time, perhaps, like figuring out how to be crafty. And then at the end of the day, like, there's like a game. Like you can take all these guys and then set them up, with one of your friends and then literally play a game with them. So now you get to like win, do competition, and like discover the spirit of competition and in socialization. Like I can't think of anything similar to it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because people will come at this from all, I don't know if you want to call it 3 of those different angles, but, gaming, art, lore. And so it is interesting that a lot of times you go into the store that sells Magic the Gathering, and on that particular day, more of the folks in there are talking about this other game with figurines. And then it's like this really weird back door into arts and crafts, because instead of buying a bunch of Magic cards that day, you buy a box of Space Marines and a couple of paints. And then all of a sudden, instead of like sleeving cards that night, you are assembling a model, priming a model, painting a model. And that's where it started for me. It was my family moved to towns when I was 12 years old. And in the town we used to live in, I played Star Wars customizable card game. And in the new town, nobody played that, but all the kids were getting into Warhammer 40K. And so, my parents were like, felt a little bad about like taking all my friends away from me. We're like, all right, we'll fund you getting like a few like Warhammer 40K boxes here. And then, so for me, it was replacing that game and socialization aspect. But there I was that night, before playing the game with my friends the next day, instead of sleeving cards and making a deck, I was painting Dark Eldar warriors that night. And that led down this whole long path into this hobby, which is, you can call it art if you want, but it's definitely arts and crafts. It's this creation. There's a meditative aspect to it, creativity, all that stuff.
Yeah, I didn't actually start painting until 3 or 4 years ago, and I'm 40. So, I mean, it does work for everybody.
Yeah, it really does.
One of the things you notice in the hobby is that it's kids, men, women of all ages really getting into it. And it's also something you hear some of them talk about getting their creative side stuff out and things like that. So how has working in this hobby and doing what you do, how has that like helped or affected your mental health and things like that?
I think Scott's kind of at the top of the game. How would you answer that, Scott?
I appreciate that, Kenny. Thank you. So it's not going to be a satisfying answer, I think, for the listeners of the podcast, because for me, miniature painting is intertwined with content creation at this point to a large degree. So early on in my YouTube career, what that meant was that the success of my painting and my videos was tied to my happiness, unfortunately. And so what that means is there wasn't much of a mental safety net in the hobby for me, because it was all about making videos and getting views. But this is changing a lot for me lately. And now I'm beginning to rediscover what it used to mean to me when I was little, which is camaraderie with friends, excitement over having fully painted armies and preparing for games and things like that. And so it's really something to look forward to, I think, a lot of the times, to conventions, to escalation leagues, to things like that. It's something to look forward to, and a great outlet for excitement and creativity. But yeah, for me, I had to deal with YouTube a little bit before I could get there again.
Yeah, so all three of the folks on this podcast right now, started out as a hobby, and then it became what we do full time. And so the question of how does this relate to stress levels and stuff, like all three of us have an awesome job, but it is, our career, I guess, is tied in with these little figurines. But I do remember a time not so long ago where I had a real stressful job. And when I was avoiding thinking about that, I would be like shopping on eBay, buying figurines, and then, painting them up as a way of coping with very real stress in my life. And that's what a lot of this documentary got into, which I thought was really great, the way they handled that.
Yeah, when I watch Brett's videos, the Goobertown Hobby videos, I see a lot of like what you just say come through in your videos. Like, it's all like sometimes you don't even like paint a model like for me to like watch as a guide. You're just like talking inspirationally about the process in the background. And like you're one of the only guys who make like a 25-minute video, and I'll just like watch every second of it because like of that inspiration and background. So like that comes through, I think, a lot in what you're saying. And and to Scott's point, about having like kind of like happiness tied to like the victory of like a video, right? Like it can weigh on you, right? Because now you're saying is you're like, if someone doesn't like me or like what I do, I don't feel good. And I think we get trapped in that, not just like on videos on YouTube or whatever, but like I think a lot of times we get trapped by that, like just in life, right? And so I also have gone through these struggles, like as Scott has said. I've never been at the the YouTube success level of either of these gentlemen who have really come out the gate and just like, in my opinion, like really embraced the YouTube culture and brought Warhammer 40K and like miniature painting to like a whole new group of people, which is so amazing. But I have definitely struggled with it as well. And someone once told me, I can't even remember who it was. He was like, because I am also very competitive at playing these games. Like I don't just paint them. I also love playing them. I love the spirit of competition. But somebody once in a game, probably like 10 years ago at a trade show, probably Adepticon or something, said something to me during a game where I was winning. I was destroying this guy, right? And I was like, ooh, it's not looking good for you. He's like, you just got to redefine the parameters for victory, Kenny. That's it. He's like, I know I'm not going to win this game. But I have redefined the parameters for success. For all I got to do now is kill your great unclean one, and I have mentally won this game. Okay. A smile on his face the entire time. I mean, he's losing the game. He's gonna get tabled, but like he did. He killed that great unclean one, and in his mind, he was like, "I have won. I have accomplished my tasks." And I was like, "Damn, dude, that was like a decade ago, and I never forgot that. It's like always in my head, like redefine the parameters for victory." And I did in kind of a lot of the ways I was doing my job as a commission painter early on. It shifted away from that, and sure enough, I felt a lot better about it.
Yeah. I think Kenny's being a little too polite to us. I think one thing that Kenny does that probably neither me or Brent does is he is involved in making videos, live streaming, and commission painting all at the same time. So when we say that our jobs are miniature painting, like that's Kenny's job times two. Because like not only do you not necessarily paint the things you want to paint, but you're also making content about it. So I wonder if you've ever really wrestled or struggled with commission painting, kind of removing the joy from the hobby for you.
Oh, I did. That's why I quit it 4 years ago.
Hey, all right, there it is. Nice.
Yeah.
I tried to get him to paint some Infinity stuff and got that answer right there. So,
All right,
I mean,
good.
because you're right about it. Like, I mean, I did. It was a big part of my journey, though. I won't lie. Like, being a commercial artist is fun. That's my trade, right? So, like, for 6 straight years, I was a commercial artist, very happy painting models for other people, and then one day I wasn't. And I had to redefine my parameters for victory, and I pivoted more to like an education model, more like instead of just painting one person's army at a time, why don't I just kind of like help everyone paint their army with like kind of my commission painter system, you know, that like based on sustainability. And so that really did help big time. But you know, I'm going into my 11th year as Next Level Painting, and I still sometimes like wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, like, oh my God, I got to paint that army for this guy in the morning. And I'm like, no, you don't. You quit that. You quit that already, Kenny. But it can weigh on you, man. But I mean, like, just, you know, a long-winded way of saying, like, despite the sometimes the stresses we can put on ourselves, even when we're just painting our own stuff for like a tournament next weekend, like that is like such a minuscule amount of like my day versus how happy I am to craft things that, you know, that I've read about and fantasized about and schemed about endlessly, talked about with my friends on Discord, and then getting to go do it. Like, you know, I might stress about that timeline, but at the end of the day, those like 2 days I'm at that convention playing with my toys is like undoes all that.
I like that your recurring nightmare is needing to finish painting an army for a client. I enjoy that.
I just got my first commission army to paint. It's always been a couple models here and there. I just got 45 Infinity models for somebody. So that's probably becoming my nightmare here very soon once I start on it.
So the same models you're trying to pass off to Kenny?
Look at this guy over here. Infinity models are a special challenge for a commission painter because everyone wants them to look like Angel Herald's Infinity models.
And that's all I have ever done. Nobody has asked me to do anything different. So I wouldn't know at this point.
It's like, hey, can you make him look like the box out here? You know that guy's like the best painter in the world, right? No, I cannot.
The answer is immediately no.
Yeah. So this does capture an interesting aspect, which is some people are so involved in either collecting or the game, and painting is not a big part of their hobby and a big part of their interest. Whereas for other folks, it's very much switched and swapped. And I think most of us on the call are more interested in painting than some of the other aspects.
Yeah, and the three of y'all have a different way of presenting some of the same material and handling it. Like Kenny is a lot of airbrush work and how to get it looking good quick. Scott tends to lean more into explaining different techniques from video to video to video and how things work and the different processes. And here I discovered this, let's work on it together. And Brent is these are the techniques, these are how they work. Let me show you step by step, and painting a happy little tree in the background.
And ASMR. Like he's also an ASMR streamer.
Yeah. Very calming.
So it's y'all are three of the different ways to present different aspects of the hobby and how to do the same thing in 3 different ways.
Yeah, I think there's that. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think is interesting about YouTube. Something I personally never really got because, like, I feel like I hit the YouTube ship. I was just a little late, like, in my game. But when I see, like, you know, the Scotts and the Brents, like, of the world, they're not the only ones out there. They're just some of the more successful ones currently. There's a lot of people, a lot of people generating incredible content in a way that I feel like respects and embraces the culture of YouTube, which has become a part of our culture. It's embedded in our culture. It's not like, hey, there's this place that I'm going to go online and look at some funny videos like it used to be, like, you know, 10, 15 years ago. It is a part of our life. It's cultural. It's embedded. And so, like, the way that a lot of these cats now present their material on there, like, really honors that community and really honors that style, while bringing their own unique, like almost like it's, I don't know, I feel like it's pretty vulnerable. Like a lot of people look at it and they're like, oh, this guy's just doing a thing, he's doing a bit. It's like, no, this is actually like culturally, like he's being incredibly vulnerable right now. Like the way they're respecting the medium, the way they're embracing it. And that's kind of like where I think that this new wave of like incredible miniature content on YouTube is about to snowball and like going to just explode. The joy of miniatures is going to bring it to the youth again. You know, so it's already been snowballing, but now that like it's there on YouTube, which is like our culture, it's like, it's only a matter of time before you're starting to see videos from like literally 17-year-old kids, you know, like putting out content. And it's, you know, TikTok and stuff like that. And it's just like, yeah, this is our culture now too.
Yeah, I downloaded TikTok a few weeks ago. I couldn't figure it out yet, but I'm worried that once I do figure it out, yeah, there's going to be that 15-year-old on there just painting those salamander space marines really nice. And I'm not going to know how to cope.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in this show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
That's all right. That's all right. What a time to be alive.
You added something like Twitch on top of that with the live interaction there, and it makes for a whole different experience than it would have been 10, 15 years ago.
I'll tell you what, man, Twitch has been my number one girl for like about four years now. And I love that. I love the live platforms, you know, like, and you know, it's funny.
I tend to watch Scott on Fridays and you off and on whenever you're on. And I've been watching a lot of Miniatures Den with Vincenzo Celeste.
Oh, I love him.
He's got a fun stream.
Oh yeah. I love that cat. I mean, and Twitch is like the Wild West of miniature painting right now. It's like, no matter you go on there, there's 17 people painting minis right now and engaging with their communities, and so, you know, to the point of this podcast, like your normal content, like I absolutely, I would say almost weekly see people in chat like referencing like, yo, this chat community here on Twitch for this miniature community is like what kept me going this year, stuff like that. Not like referencing me, but like, because we refer to like the best community in the game is on Twitch, not like on my channel or Scott's channel. It's just like, that's the community on Twitch. It's like the same group of people. It's like 1,000 of them migrating from one guy's channel to the next channel, depending on what's on, and then dividing between 10 of them. And they're all kind of like bouncing between all the channels. And it's like, you get to see all the viewers in the community. I've been doing it for 4 years. I almost recognize all their screen names now. Like, it's like, it's crazy. It's like, they're like, when they tell me their real name, I'm like, wait, what? Your name, that's not your name. Your name is Kilty O'Neill, son.
Yeah.
Like,
and it seems platform.
It seems like it almost becomes almost like a friend or family atmosphere on something like Twitch. Everybody shares various problems that they've had, which I think goes along with what our podcast is about. I know a couple years ago, Kenny, you had to deal with the forest fires in California, and you talked about it in your streams and your videos. And was it your cat, Scott, that died a couple months ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we heard about that in various streams and videos, and it almost seems for some streamers and even some viewers almost like a point of therapy to deal with some of the issues y'all have had to deal with.
I feel like the black sheep on this podcast, so you guys are good. I love learning. I love learning about it, and Mark's definitely kind of taught me a lot. But I think that the communities on whether it's Twitch or YouTube or even what we've seen with, on our own growth of Twitter or Discord, is that people are just looking for community, especially now where you have this global pandemic that has kind of sentenced us all to our homes. And there's just a sense of vulnerability that kind of almost seems surprising, that you're willing to open up to strangers, but it's improved so much mental health. And it's been almost a form of therapy for a lot of people that might be fans of your guys' content or just content in general, just to be surrounded with people that like the same things that they do.
Yeah, common interests. So, I mean, the major theme of that documentary was, sitting alone and painting your minis and getting into the meditative flow and exploring your art and kind of calming down and chilling out at the end of the day. But the secondary point that was made quicker by one of the interviewees was that there is this sense of community. And he was saying that, he didn't have a ton of friends, and this was his interest, but then as he got more and more into the hobby, he realized how many other people are really into this. And then there is that community who you have a lot in common with. If you can talk to essentially a stranger about the color schemes for Death Guard or for Ultramarines or Death Corps of Krieg, like you got a starting point there. And it goes so much farther beyond that if you do start talking about, little bits of cultural touchstones. I mean, we all know who Duncan Rhodes is here. And we can, it's almost like we've watched a bunch of the same movies or TV shows or something. Like there's an immediate point for us to start to have a conversation and start to, exchange inside jokes and everything. And there are all kinds of niche, weird little communities out there, but this is a good one for sure.
And you also have like every walk of life working on it. Robin Williams was very well known for his Warhammer collection. Henry Cavill, Superman and The Witcher right now. He just put out a video painting some Custodes.
Henry Cavill almost broke the internet for a week when he Instagrammed a Custodes. We were like, wait, what?
So you've got like super famous people down to the nerdiest of the nerds and everything in between. It's a hobby for everyone.
This is all new to me. I love Robin Williams and Henry Cavill both. That's cool though. So kind of getting back onto some of the tutorial sides that you guys do, and we really wanted to set this episode up as kind of like an entry point into what miniature painting is, and really if anyone had an interest in it. And so if someone's interested in kind of getting started, what is like the best, I guess, like foundational spot to start?
YouTube and Twitch.
I guess I meant like product wise, like what, like kind of like paintings and like companies to go with.
Like
such a question.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, that is a loaded question.
Yeah. I mean, it's a totally fair question. But there are so many ways you could go. And I mean, I'm not sure if I don't know, but about products, I think whatever is available to you locally at your local game store is probably the best place to start. I'm a huge proponent for doing something like going to the store, find something you think looks cool, maybe talking to an employee, working out a color scheme together, and then just buying the paints you need for that one thing, going home, painting it, start to finish, and then coming back and trying it again with something else. Maybe you pick up 2 or 3 more paints, and you kind of just go from there. It's kind of like a large snowball. It turns into an avalanche at the end. But that isn't the right way to do it necessarily. There are many ways you could do it.
I think that's a pretty good start. So there's this term FLGS, friendly local game store, and yeah, seriously, get out your Google Maps and see if you find a store that's selling Warhammer or model kits or comics or Magic the Gathering, and go to those stores and see if they're selling figurines to be painted. And then, have a conversation with whoever's behind the counter there and see if it actually is a friendly local game store. I mean, there's weirdos out there. You might end up with one, there's some strange people in the hobby. There's some strange, friendly local business owners. But if you do like the person behind the counter, that's going to be one of your new friends. And if you do like them, you should support what they're doing. And you take their advice and you give them your hobby books.
Well stated, man. Like that's because Scott's point makes the most sense as well. Like your point, like if you got a local store, not only is it a place obviously to go and retail at to get the things you need, they are also typically the place that the community chills. That's their clubhouse, right? So the people you're going to be getting to know in your adventure are going to be congregating there. That's their spot. So you definitely want to support the spot, because that's how the spot pays rent, right? And even if an internet seller has the same stuff they have for 10% off, 20% off, whatever, I typically try to, split that up, try to make my savings where they matter. Like I try to get my savings on things they don't carry, and I try to support them because they provide me with that place to go hang with my peoples, play my games, right? Talk with my nerds. But and vastly, just to add to the point, product wise, there's no one product to rule them all to get started in the game, right? You need paints, you need brushes, you need minis, right? Like to oversimplify it. So it's most people, if they get into a Games Workshop product like Warhammer 40K, which is like the biggest one on the planet, most people, they just start buying that stuff. They're just like, hey, they make their own paints, they make their own brushes, and they make it easy. It's almost like paint by numbers. Like they got all the colors you need in the back of the box. They kind of have them all right there for you. And even though they may be more expensive than many of their competitors, they've also gone really above and beyond with that paint by numbers methodology, right? Like, okay, here's the 4 blues I need to paint this guy. And for like a guy like, Miniac and, goobertown-hobbies, they know that it's the same blue 4 times in a row. That's just changed a little bit. But like a person just starting on the street is like, that's really hard to do. No, here are the blues. They're ready for you, bro. You just hit it with this blue, then hit it with this blue, and you're good. Paint by numbers. And and many people are able to paint the next day because of that. So a lot of people will graduate, beyond those products, but I don't know one guy who didn't start there, and so nothing wrong with just jumping in, buying a box of high elves or whatever. Call back to my mascot.
Hell yeah.
and just buying all the Citadel stuff right there, just trying it out.
Yeah, I think to answer the heart of the question though, because that was a super fair question, and we're all kind of very deep into the hobby, so we're going to have an answer that's not necessarily helpful to someone who wants something quantifiable and actionable. I think the person that makes the best starter set for paint is Vallejo, but if you can't get Vallejo at your local store, I don't know. To me, ordering things online just kind of slows down your process. You're excited, you want to get into it right now, just get whatever's at the store, because like Kenny just said, a lot of it is really similar, and they're just separate by these little nuances, little differences in paint ranges. But I like Vallejo. You need brushes. Going to a Hobby Lobby or any kind of hobby store, getting some synthetic brushes to start out with is a great spot. You need a palette of some kind, whether it's a hard one, literally anything in your house can be a hard palette. Your table can be a hard palette, or a wet palette. You need water.
My table is a hard palette.
There you go. It works. You need lights. Little lamps work great. Paper towel, some primer, which you can just get from Home Depot, Walmart, some home center store. And then you need obviously the models you want to paint. Some glue, super glue, plastic glue. and then some way to get the models off of the spruce, which they come in the box. So like clippers and X-Acto knife. That's probably like the 10-ish things you need to get started painting miniatures.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, I walked into our local gaming store and they were doing a Guild Ball demo. And that's how I got started into it. I liked the models and picked up a Mortician set, Scott.
Yes.
And picked up some Vallejo paint. Now I'm painting Infinity tags and stuff all the time, and I absolutely love Chimera paints, and Scale 75 are like my go-to choices. And it just kind of evolves with how you paint. You want to do better, and something doesn't work the way you want it to. You end up picking up something else to see if it'll do what you want it to do. And that's kind of how I progressed over the last couple of years, learning since I got into it.
Yeah, I mean, in that way, it's a lot like almost any hobby. You know, if you golf or something, you buy a new putter every once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
golf is an apt analogy because golf is real expensive, Doug.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And then you get into the conversation of, you know, is this hobby actually expensive? And I mean, it's more expensive than knitting, but less expensive than golf. Less expensive than a lot of hobbies, really. But yeah, there is this question of after you get home from work, what do you do with the time before you go to bed? And there are lots of different answers to that. A lot of people in the world just kind of watch TV for a couple hours and have a couple beers and go to bed. Whereas if maybe a few nights a week you spend that time painting minis instead, I think that's a real solid choice.
Yeah, you have something to show for it in the end. Something to even show off in some cases.
I mean, I think that's what. Okay, do you guys do this? So I'll have just painted something I really like that I'm really proud of, and then I'll put it somewhere in my room so that I can kind of see it. Like every time I glance off to the left a little bit, like I'll be on my computer working, just so I can see it every now and then, make me happy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Whenever I got a couple of coats on last night, and a couple of times today, I've just walked by my desk and not ready to put another coat on or anything, but just pick it up and like, yeah, that's a nice green. I got that nice green on last night. Look at that.
Whenever I finish like a unit for my army, I always get out the rest of my army and arrange it and just look at it. It's just like, oh yeah, what's one step closer to being toward my goal. I love playing like Toy Soldier with the thing I most recently finished. Absolutely. I
just want to make sure like I'm not the only one because sometimes it's embarrassing to admit that like I'm like, yo, I'll put it over there on the shelf just to kind of see this rhino I just finished, and just like I'm the greatest painter in the world. Look at that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
You're good.
Yeah.
I run into the issue of I'll paint something now and look at it, it's like, dang, that's awesome, and I'll go and play a game and look at one of my units that I painted like 3 years ago. It's like, God, that's embarrassing, and want to strip it and repaint it.
Yeah, that's a part of it too.
We don't speak to that part of this.
All models are beautiful.
Yeah. Because painting at the end of the day, also like, you know, I think the analogy is like art like this is like you're constantly battling like bouts of absolute complete narcissism and then complete crippling self-doubt. You know, like, so I'll look at that rhino one day and be like, yeah, I'm literally the greatest painter on planet Earth. How could you contest that? And then I'll be painting a model like the next day and like, it's not done. It's probably going to look good when I'm done. But like the whole time I'm like stressing about it. Instead of coming in my room to look at the rhino, now I'm looking at this piece of shit. And I'm like, Kenny, you're just terrible at this, man. Like they're all going to find out you're terrible at this.
They're all going to find out.
That's like a weekly thing for me.
Oh no.
But then it drives me to sit down and keep painting.
Okay.
We've kind of addressed this already, but with somebody getting into it, what just general advice would you have for them as a whole?
Hit him with it. Hit him with the good vibes.
Find something that excites you. So start off with buy a model that looks friggin' sweet, that makes you happy, that you just want to pull it out of the package and start painting. And then as you are painting, take pride in the little victories. A lot of that first model is going to be pretty bad, but if you at least find a color that you really like on there, or if it's a model that you have to build yourself and you think you put like the funniest combination of head with like arm posture possible, like be proud of that. If you like cut out his hand so that he's giving the finger to the audience, like be proud of that. Like even if the rest of the paint job is terrible, which, you know, we're all learning, we're all starting somewhere and hopefully getting better with time. But on those first minis, just find something that you love, you know, a really good color, whatever it is, find something to be happy with.
Thank you. That was very therapeutic to hear.
Find the joy. Find the joy. Yeah.
Felt like I was watching one of your videos right now.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he has like a 20-minute video on 2-part epoxies. And that's what it's like listening to it.
It's the best. It's all, but it's the rule of cool. Kind of like what you started with is like, that's absolutely how you should start. Like, you know, people are like, oh, there's a wrong way to do this the right way. Okay, for sure. But like, let's talk about the actual right way to do it. You walk in there, you see what's cool, buy that thing, paint that thing, make it, you know, like the coolest thing. That's always the right approach to things, you know? And then you love it because of reasons. Like for me, it was seeing Abaddon the Despoiler in like 1999 in a Hobbytown, USA. After my brother badged me, like he's like, "Yo, you got to play this game, dude. It's gonna be sick." I was like, "Dog, you are a nerd. Get away from me!" And he drags me into this Hobbytown, and I'm like, "Dog, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen." And then he's like, "Yeah, but look at this stuff." And then I see Abaddon Despoiler. Like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever seen." You're right. Let's do it. You know, buy that Abaddon. Started spraying them with enamels, and like got my testers like enamel paints with that little plastic paintbrush my dad bought me to do like submarine models when I was a kid. Started painting up Abaddon. Oh, it was bad. But I love that dude. He was so fresh. He was like enamel black and enamel red. I thought it was the sickest thing I've ever seen.
Real good. Real good.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
I think what Brent said, I want to highlight something Brent said, is like what you're going to paint is going to look bad. And I think there's an element of getting over yourself and your failure so that you can really enjoy what you're doing. There's this tendency in our hobby as adults to want to compare what we're doing to people who have been doing it for like 15 years. Like, I mean, I could give you some names of people on Instagram and you could go follow them, and like their level of skill would put a certain kind of person in crippling depression, not able to touch their brush, right? So it's just like, I mean, if you're doing it for the first time, it's not going to look amazing. But like, if you just realize that this journey in the hobby is your own, it's different from everyone else's. No one starts at the same place. No one ends at the same place. It's going to be a lot more enjoyable. Like, so yeah, just don't worry about what other people can do, or about what you can do, and how you progress in your own hobby.
Scott, that is so well put. You reminded me of another thing because I've been doing this for a long time, and people give me all these one-liners, right? Someone once told me, because I was having a bout of crippling self-doubt and I couldn't pick up the paintbrush because I was looking at, like, you know, pick one of those names off the list. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm saying? And they were like, look, man, it's okay to be jealous, right? Because like you can't control like your emotion, right? Like how you initially feel when you see something, that's out of your control, right? He's like, but like what you do with that, like the action you take is up to you. And so he's like, so what I feel like you're doing right now, Kenny, is like you're feeling jealous of this guy's stuff, and then you've chosen to envy him, right? Mm-hmm. Like you rather than to like ambition, right? Like, and to really, see the positive in what's occurred here and being more ambitious. You've chosen envy, which kind of takes you down a path of like kind of making excuses. Like, it's not that guy is so good at painting. It's like, but he airbrushed it, or, this guy, he's got better photography than me. Like, he's like, you're just making excuses about why he's not good at painting so that you don't have to be good at painting. Mm-hmm. He's like, so be jealous and then choose ambition. And I was like, damn, dude. And like, I changed my life. That was like another one of those like decade ago moments, like at a trade show somewhere.
That's good advice.
Meanwhile, I just don't take video shots of the model from the bad angles, and then I put the video together. I go with the excuses and
That's the power we have as video makers. We can only show what looks good.
Yeah, we have the entire power to frame this. Like, this is a speed paint job, so I wasn't trying too hard, but wanted to crank out this model and see how it looked.
You get to voice it over after the paint job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I worked so hard on this video. I'm going to have to spin this one as a quick paint job right here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But no, in terms of like one-liner advice, I think the most important thing is just the act of sitting down at your hobby desk or whatever and opening up the paint and getting the paintbrush wet. I certainly find that the hardest part is choosing to sit down and do some painting. But once I'm into it, the time just flies by. It's 3 hours later. And I don't know, if you have ever done a coloring book, you can understand this, but just you get really focused in on like coloring inside the lines and do this and then do this and be neat here and fill up this white space. And it's just, you really can get into the zone. And I find that once I start painting, none of the other mental noise matters. The self-doubt is much less important unless I'm like, I want to put out a video in 3 days and this is not looking particularly good right now. But for most folks, unless you have a game the next day or something, there shouldn't be that pressure on you. You should just be sitting down and seeing where it takes you.
Well, good point. As a guy who's typically always painting for a tournament the next weekend or something like that, which I've done that for a long time. That is kind of one interesting thing that happened in 2020 for me was, there was no trade shows. That's a big part of my enjoyment in the hobby is like, after having done all the things that have been discussed on this show, at the end of it, I get to go to this trade show with all my peoples and we get to play in a tournament over the weekend. It's the ultimate, for me, the culmination of like the experience. So a lot of times you find yourself painting for, those timelines. Like, I got to get that new unit in my list so I can be better, Well, in 2020, that didn't occur. And so I found myself a little sad that I couldn't go to my events. And, I felt like I was like, oh, you're being selfish, Kenny. But it still felt sad, right? Like I couldn't go. But then one day I was like, well, that means there's no timers, dude. Why don't we just actually sit down and just really go hard and so I did that. And so I'm painting my first full army from start to finish in maybe 5 years, for myself. Mm-hmm. And I'm still not done. I said this in last summer, but I am almost done. And I have never once felt like I was rushed. I never once felt like there was some other timer hanging over me. When I didn't feel like painting, I didn't paint. When I did, I did. And I went hard. And I can't tell you the endless joy that has brought me on that rediscovery during that one cool thing that personally happened in my Beats lab in the last year was that.
That's awesome.
Mm. And I know we have limited more time with y'all today, but one of the things, and you just kind of talked about it, Kenny, is with everything going on like it is, everybody's stuck indoors. You can't go to the shop to hang out and paint with people or play with people. The creativity of the hobby itself, how has that helped y'all kind of cope with everything going on? Has it been a help, a benefit? Dealing with the stresses of quarantines and not having the events to go to, or has it been more stressful trying to figure out stuff you hadn't done in the past? How has that worked for you?
My year has gone by pretty quick, honestly. It hardly seems that a year has passed since all this craziness began. But I find myself, every day having stuff to do. And then, if I do have a day where I'm sitting down and getting some painting done, that time goes fast. Just a time machine until the next day. So I consider myself lucky that nothing has fallen apart for me in my life over the last year. Very fortunate, but I think the hobby has helped with that for sure.
Scott, I remember something recently when you made your announcement that you were going to start moving to doing some live content. And I kind of felt that, when you made that video announcement, that it was like you were making some kind of decision. I just didn't have I was like, man, there's a big decision here. And I just don't know why, what's going on here. Is there anything related to this question in that video?
Yeah. So I just had a bunch of nasty tendencies that I started to realize about myself that I needed to kind of check at the door. And that was that, I was comparing myself to other people and like you said earlier, making excuses for the reasons why my videos weren't doing as well, or why I wasn't painting as well as other people. I was just making a bunch of excuses, just being kind of a nasty human being. And then I was so then I kind of just did some soul searching and kind of realized that, I'm making videos, as weird as it sounds, I'm making videos for myself. I'm painting miniatures for myself. I'm competing against myself. I'm not trying to play the game. I'm not trying to do what YouTube wants me to do or anything like that. So choosing to make videos and releasing them whenever they've come out, it was a reaction to that, a reaction to I'm going to intentionally not try to play YouTube's game and just do whatever I want to do. So the question, has the creativity of the hobby helped me cope with stress? It's kind of hard to answer just because it's a constant in my life. It's always been there. That outlet for creativity, always thinking about the lore of my army and how that impacts the color scheme, and then how to draft the list that I'm I'm competitive, even though I don't compete. I don't know why, but I love just to think about that. Yeah, I think that as a sidekick to what I'm dealing with in front.
That's the scheming. That is one of the most, people don't even know about the scheming phase. It doesn't matter how competitive you are. The fact that there are rules and there is a competition that may happen, whether or not you're going to be in it or not, the scheming is endless, bro. And it is so satisfying.
It is very satisfying. But yeah, having the sidekick of this hobby to deal with the stress that I'm dealing with, I would say it definitely helped. If I was a different kind of YouTuber dealing with the same kinds of issues, because I think we all deal with the same kind of issues, comparing ourselves to each other, making excuses, wondering why we're not ending up in certain places that other people are ending up in. Having the hobby in the passenger seat to help cope with that, I think probably helped me a lot more than maybe some other things might have, but it is hard to say.
Man, thanks. Cause that was just a question I've had for you for a while. Cause I remember when you made that announcement, all my, a lot of friends on my chat list were like, yo, Maniac just said this stuff. I was like, oh shit, man, what's going on over here? But which is funny, because that's similar advice that Brent gave me almost a year ago. You remember that, Brent?
Yeah, I remember. Then you stopped making videos, so now I wish I hadn't told you that advice.
No, I didn't stop making them. I stopped making them for a content schedule. That's what you told me. It's just fine. Maybe they were months apart instead of a couple of weeks apart. Maybe that was your advice, but it changed it was very helpful. It honestly was helpful. It was kind of similar to what Scott just said. Is man, you know what? I don't need to make a video for YouTube every week anymore. I make it for myself, and if I'm not feeling it, I'm not doing it. And and that's directly because of the hobby. I only paint things that I think are cool, and that definitely helped me out.
Yeah. This question of output, whether it's videos or how many models we're painting, or whatever your own work is, really interesting. How much do we really need to be doing, and quantity versus quality, and mental health versus quantity, mental health versus quality. All these things are important. And in our little rig, our little game here, there's this idea that if you make videos about painting miniatures, you're supposed to put one out a week, which is, I don't even know where that came from, but and why are there 7 days in a week? Why are there not more or less? But you're supposed to be putting out one video per week.
Why are there only 24 hours in a day, dog?
Yeah, I know. It's not helpful. There should be more, but And actually, if you just slow down a little bit, put out a video every 10, 14 days, you can be putting out better videos. You can be having more fun painting. You can be living life at a much lower level of stress. And in this little type of business that we do, it's all about how many people watch your videos. And if you're putting out half the videos, but they're getting watched 3 times as much because people can tell that you are in a good place, having fun, doing quality, painting, that all balances out in the end. And so I think that's the advice I gave you a year ago, Kenny, and you slowed down on the content, but your videos have been good since then.
I make better videos 100% because of that advice. I was making some trash videos, sir.
So coming to a close here. Any last words any of y'all want to get in here at the end, or promote yourself, where we can find you for people that don't know who you are or where to find you?
Ooh, I want to do it. Like, I want to do it for Scott.
Kenny, you kill me, man.
A follow for Scott is a follow for Kenny. Hit him Maniac on YouTube.
When you subscribe to Maniac, subscribe to Next Level Painting and also to Goobertown-hobbies. I think there's so many channels. We're in this really interesting area where, like, I don't know, there's more every day. These channels cropping up that make excellent content that's different. I don't know what to say. They're all different. They're all special in their own way. It's a great time to learn how to paint miniatures just because of the amount of content, like live streaming on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube. There's so much of it to sift through that it can almost be a barrier to entry because it's like I need to consume all of this before I can start painting. But I think if you have it alongside you while you're painting, it can be a real help to learn how to paint.
Yeah, check out your local hobby store, get some models, take them home while you're putting them together and painting them up, be watching some YouTube. And I will say, I thought this podcast was going to be about the documentary Paint and Plastic on the Tiny Tin Soldier channel. But look up the YouTube documentary Paint and Plastic. It's a half-hour video. It does a much better job than we did of explaining what this hobby is and why you should check it out. And then after that video, just go wherever YouTube takes you.
Yeah, that's literally the best advice.
And the algorithm. So.
Yeah, and you check out one, and it's going to lead down a rabbit hole into 13 other creators, and
so be specific in your search.
Next level painting.
Yeah.
If you want to learn how to paint a specific color or model, type that in.
You'll get a video by Vince Venturella, guaranteed.
100% every time.
Every time.
I think he covers everything with everyone.
Yeah,
he does.
So yeah, that's a safe bet.
So comprehensive. It's ridiculous.
Well, thank y'all for y'all's time. We appreciate y'all joining us tonight.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for doing what you do.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
I'm done being a fangirl and had a great time. Hope y'all enjoyed us too. So, you got something to get to, Scott? We'll talk to y'all later.
All right. See ya.
We'll provide a link to the videos and the channels in the description below, wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Thanks to Scott, Kenny, and Brent for their time and their knowledge. This was a blessing of an episode to be a part of and to get to just learn and understand mental health in another completely niche fandom that wasn't on my radar, but you guys can find us and follow us everywhere at Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube, and wherever you guys also get your... You guys can follow us everywhere at Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and Letterboxd. And wherever you guys get your podcast from, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button and leave us a 5-star written review. The more reviews we get, the greater the visibility. And the greater the visibility that we have, the more hope we get to spread and just to ensure people that they have value and that they have worth. You guys can go to victimsandvillains.net where you guys can find movie reviews from Mark, myself, and a whole slew of other talented writers, along with past episodes and, most importantly, suicide prevention resources. So until next time, we'll see you guys next time talking about part 2 to this episode. Have a good one, guys.